George Orwell said the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. Annina is an individual ensuring that Africans are not only remembered by history, but that their dignity is preserved even in death. Annina Van Neel is the founder and CEO of the Tickybox Project, which is a Black cultural heritage organization working to decolonize Black history and archaeology and to make this heritage accessible to the African diaspora and descendant communities. She holds a bachelor's degree in environmental and geographical science and archaeology from the University of Cape Town, where Annina emigrated to the British Overseas Territory of St. Helena Island in 2012 to work as an environmental officer for an airport construction project. She encountered the neglected but the most significant physical trace of the transatlantic slave trade, the African burial grounds. Her journey is featured in the documentary A Story of Bones. Annina is now living in her country of origin, Namibia, to learn about her own colonial history and the genocide of the Nama and Herero under German rule.
Thank you so much for making the time and coming all the way from Namibia.
Such an honor to be here.
So where were you born? Because we met on the island, St. Helena Island, but where were you born? What were your favorite pastimes as a child? How did you spend your days?
I was born in beautiful Namibia.
So our next door neighbor.
Yeah. We have a very close relationship, obviously, South Africa and Namibia. And my days as a child was spent either in a ravine somewhere playing or exploring or climbing a tree, setting fire to something I shouldn't have. But yeah, we were born after independence, so it was just, a really good time to be in Namibia. Our parents were thriving and working hard.
So you received a bachelor's degree in environmental and geographical science and archaeology at the University of Cape Town. Why did you choose this discipline?
Well, actually, I wanted to be a marine biologist. Obviously, my passion and my interest in the natural environment, springing from always being outside and engaging with nature, leaned towards a scientific degree, wanting to answer all these questions about life and our engagement and interaction with life. But unfortunately, I didn't like physics and chemistry in high school, so I couldn't go for marine biology. So environmental and geographical science was like an entryway into that initially. But it led me towards archaeology, funny enough, which is also in-depth, looking at our stories as human and how we engage with the environment and express that through our culture.
I never thought of it, archaeology that way. Who has been the most influential person in your life and how have they been so?
The most influential person in my life is my father, my late father, Jacobus Tickie Van Neel. And he was an incredible human being. He was in love with humanity and how beautiful we expressed ourselves through sports and culture. He spoke 5 different languages, 2 of which he learned in his later years. He played the guitar, loved classical music. And what I really admired about him was how he journeyed inwards in his later years and looked into his past and his own heritage to try and deal with his own mental health problems, mental health issues that his father also had. And I really looked up to him for that he could be so passionate about humanity, but also realize and recognize how it was really a reflection and a mirroring of who he was on the inside, and how humanity has this dichotomy of being able to express itself so beautifully through culture and music and sport. But also, and what is tied to our history, is the trauma, and the trauma that he experienced with apartheid, the trauma that is tied to his history and his father's and his grandfather's history through the genocide that happened in Namibia. And I think in his later years, when he looked at how his personal connections with his family, his father, and with us, and that braveness of addressing how that made him the human that he is really what inspired me to be and to do what I do today.
Was he conscious of the mental illness issues?
Yes, I think the awareness was always there, but addressing it, acknowledging and addressing it is a completely different leap, especially for that generation. And that's why I looked up to him, because he would call me and talk about how he's tracing back his family roots and how he's trying to deal with the loss of his own father and how he didn't get the chance to apologize to him or to accept his father as just being human and imperfect.
Yeah.
And through the work that I'm doing now, I feel the same way. Like, yes, he was a father, but first and foremost, he was a human.
Yeah.
And he wasn't perfect. So yeah, it's pretty incredible that the work that I'm doing is so deeply personal.
Yeah.
And connected to the person that I most look up to.
It is special. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for allowing the space.
What do you think is your unique value proposition? What makes you memorable and impactful?
I think how I engage with people on an emotional and spiritual level is really weird. And it's really like I wear my heart on my sleeve. I always have. Working in construction made that very difficult. I was engaging in a field where it was dominated by either white, male, Afrikaans speaking, and hardcore, like no room for emotions. And that made it very difficult for me to be myself and to stay true to my core anchors, which are grounded in spirituality and that emotional connection that we share as human beings. So I had to do a lot of growth in acknowledging and accepting that that is who I am. I am that weird, emotional, spiritual being that happens to be in construction. And through the work that I've done previously, it has just manifested that space and allowed me to really reap the rewards that come with that. So yes, just being quirky and weird in every emotional, passionate, creative way that allows.
Yeah. But I suppose also that kind of industry makes you distinctive in it.
Yes, and it allowed me to operate and maneuver in spaces that others dared not to venture into. And it allowed me to contribute to that industry and shape it, help it evolve into something that's more than industrialization and capitalization, and explore these ties that we have with nature and humans, even though we're developing, embracing those ties. So really staying true to myself facilitated an authentic and holistic exploration of that industry.
So you are the founder and CEO of the Tickybox Project. What does the organization do?
The Tickybox Project explores narratives that are uncomfortable for people to connect with or to engage with, have a discussion on, mostly related to trauma that has either come about through colonialism and slavery. 95% of Africa's cultural heritage is not on African soil.
Oh.
Due to the looting that took place during colonialism and slavery, 95%. What the value of culture can mean for a community, for an individual, and just attesting to that through my own personal experiences, what it did for a colored girl moving to an overseas territory, and really manifesting and strengthening my roots to my continent, is incredible. The decolonizing of this space, never mind just the mind, but spiritually and emotionally, was only achievable due to the power of that resource, that cultural heritage site that is absolutely sacred. That experience I want to share with the world, especially with the African diaspora and the descendants, because that level of healing that can take place in transgenerational, intergenerational trauma that has been passed down from my father's father and to me that I didn't even know I had, is incredible and it's irreplaceable. So the Tickybox Project basically creates safe platforms for descendants and the diaspora to engage with their cultural heritage right now. 95% of African heritage cannot be effectively restituted or carried out through a holistic restitution. It will take 100 years. But through technology and conversations, through artistic expression, through filmmaking and telling of stories, and eliminating spaces that encourage silence when a narrative needs to be shared, is what we're all about.
I think this leads me perfectly to a story of bones. So we met when we were in St. Helena Island. So the story of bones documents the neglected history of St. Helena Island, which is in the South Atlantic, about the remains of thousands of formerly enslaved Africans. Can you share with us a brief history of this and the bones?
So my reason for going to St. Helena 12 years ago was as the environmental officer for the construction project of the airport. That required me to engage with the archaeology and the built heritage of that site. That's when I came across the most significant physical trace of the transatlantic slave trade, which is the African burial grounds on St. Helena, the most significant physical trace. Up until that point, I only knew about St. Helena through the story of Napoleon's exile, like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So this is a burial ground of formerly enslaved Africans, approximately 10,000 of them. Towards the end of the transatlantic slave trade, the British Navy intercepted illegal Portuguese vessels in the South Atlantic and brought them to St. Helena. So St. Helena was strategically placed in this Middle Passage route. And they brought approximately 27,000 liberated Africans to St. Helena, 10,000 of which did not make it. They were buried there by those that were able-bodied to do so, and the rest were shipped onto the British Caribbean. For decades, the burial grounds on St. Helena were being disturbed by government-led developments, so there was severe destruction happening on that sacred site. And initially it was with a power station being built on the burial grounds, and then more recently the construction of the airport project that I was involved with. For the airport project, they had to excavate 325 bodies, and they were placed in cardboard boxes and stored in a storage room. Initially, they were only supposed to be stored there for 2 years. It took the government eventually 14 years to conduct a reburial. We know that these people originated from Angola, Congo, and Gabon based on repeated scientific studies that were done. So that helps in reconnecting these remains, this sacred heritage, to the African continent. So my work continues now that I've left the island and have moved back to the continent to make sure that that is facilitated at a greater scale.
I was surprised at the acceptance of St. Helena Island of its British ties. I thought there'll be a different sense of independence from Britain, and which was interesting because having been colonized, you fight for your freedom
Yeah.
And that was like an interesting, I'm still struggling with it.
Yeah. Well, the Saints are fiercely British. They reminded me of that repeatedly while I was there. They are still an overseas territory. They receive most of their funding from the British government. And I think that has a real role to play with how they connect with their identity and their British identity. It was really jarring for me as well that your identity to a nation would supersede your identity to another human being, and treating those burial grounds as a site for humanity when you're thinking about the transatlantic slave trade being one of the greatest crimes against humanity. So yeah, that was part of what made, I think, the journey. It took about 12 years for me to deconstruct personally what that relationship looks like and how a community can be so disconnected to a site and a story that is absolutely beautiful and can give you so much in return. It was a difficult journey, but it was an absolutely beautiful journey because it was so deeply personal, and what was happening with the St. Helena community was mirrored in my own personal reconnection to my African identity and my Blackness.
Yeah, I'm going to go back. It just made me think of identity in a totally different way. It's amazing. So you are now based in Namibia and learning about the genocide of the Nama and the Herero under German rule. Briefly explain what was done to the Nama and Herero and why is it called genocide, and why this genocide is not widely spoken about or known.
So the genocide of 1904 to 1908 in Namibia of the Nama and Herero people during German rule was the willful or intentional killing of 70,000 people with the aim of getting rid of them. That is basically what genocide is. It's to wipe out a race, and willfully doing so. This genocide was carried out through enslavement, poisoning of wells, shooting women and children that were trying to escape, and just not allowing for survival of those people to be an option.
Why?
Namibia was a prime real estate due to its proximity to South Africa. And obviously there would have been an uprising by the indigenous people to fight for their land that they were so connected to. It's a natural response. And the Germans would just want to make a point to make sure that that wouldn't happen again. So it's not widely spoken about because it's shameful. I mean, Germany itself has not just one genocide to answer for. They also have the Jewish Holocaust, which they have owned up to and are still doing. There has been an apology from the German government, which was not done in conjunction with the indigenous people of Namibia. There are still talks of reparations or their form of reparations. So it is still a very difficult topic, and it's being highly politicized. So again, it's an uncomfortable narrative that people don't want to reflect on. I know that museums in Namibia have tried to engage in the subject. There's also the very sensitive nature of the human remains. So the people that were killed, their skulls were taken, and their family members would have to scrape the skulls. And 10,000 skulls were shipped to Germany. And they are still in private collection to this day. So there's a lot of healing that needs to take place, and healing is a very uncomfortable process. So the narrative is not widely acknowledged, and it's not widely spoken about because there is also a lack of knowledge about the subject. I mean, I grew up in Namibia, went to a German high school, and having a German history teacher, you would brush over the genocide, not even call it by its name of a genocide. And that is still being done today. My nephew, who is 18 now, had to learn about the genocide through the work that I'm doing by me going to visit a year ago the burial grounds that are in Swakopmund. So we still have a long way to go to learn how to talk about this and be uncomfortable, because people don't like to be uncomfortable. We lean towards comfort.
Yeah. What's the most courageous decisions you've taken as an environmentalist thus far, and what drove you to that decision?
My career started as an environmentalist, and is leaning more towards human rights activist currently. When they did the documentary of the campaigning for the preservation of the site and the memory of our ancestors, they sent me the final version of the film so I could see it before.
The story of bones.
Yes, this is the story of bones. And they gave me the option to edit it to how I felt comfortable. I chose to change nothing because it would finally show how I really felt about it when the cameras weren't rolling, because they chose to take footage of the times when I was being my true, authentic self. And I chose to change nothing, knowing how it would impact my relationship with the community on St. Helena. That was possibly the hardest thing I did, because as a person that is so based on that cultural asset of needing others and not wanting to be ostracized, such a human need and tactic for survival.
On an island
of 4,500 people. It was social suicide, and I knew that then. I didn't change a thing, and I let it come out as it is. Yes, that was, I think, so far the bravest thing I've done. And what I learned from them, I could not have imagined. It was the death of my ego, which is possibly the most amazing experience as an individual, as a human, to let go of all notions of needing people's approval and their opinions overriding your own sense of purpose and right and wrong.
That's powerful. What was the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in the career that you've chosen? What did you learn about your spirit?
Again, I think it would come back to experiencing the power of authorities over a resource that you're spiritually, emotionally, and so connected to. And they just claim full authority over it and carry out what they think is the right thing to do. Standing by and professionally and strategically observing what was happening, it really revealed how a system and an institution of racism is put together. How these layers and this labyrinth just revealed itself. Taking a step back and allowing a situation just to play out so that you can use it as a learning experience. That was probably the most challenging thing that I've been through in my career so far.
Yeah.
But the volumes that I've learned from it, I cannot learn in any other way than experiencing that moment when I was down on the ground and thought I could not get up again. What you bear witness to when you're down in the arena and you look up, you see it all. You see the whole web reveal itself. And that is wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
So trauma and grief of that sense is absolutely magnificent in how it is a telescope of seeing a universe that you never had sight of.
Yeah. Part of humanity that some of us know exists but don't really experience it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, birth and death is on the list for all of us.
Yeah.
It's going to have to happen. And working so closely in this environment where death is just always in conversation, it is refreshing because we avoid that discussion of death.
Yeah.
And seeing how people respond to death, it is so revealing of their identity. Mm. It really reveals the layers of structures we've built up to protect ourselves from death, the one thing that we cannot cheat and we cannot avoid.
So you are married to a European man. what about his character makes it possible for you to freely work in these areas of bringing to the forefront the colonial atrocities without adversely impacting your relationship?
To say that it doesn't impact our relationship is a lie. It's authentic, and he is authentic, and he's sincere, and that allows and facilitates a space within our relationship for me to do the same, and for us to honestly reflect jointly on our privileges. His privileges as a European, as a white man, and mine as an educated woman of a lighter skin color, and the privilege that I've had access to. And it allows me to introspect, and for us to introspect within our relationship and use that to make choices within our immediate ecosystem, within our family, within our home, that does not propagate a system of institutionalized racism. It has become extremely personal. So to say that my marriage is not impacted by the work I do, I wouldn't want a marriage like that, because I want my marriage to evolve as I evolve and as we change the world around us. So his sincerity and his authenticity allows for me to mirror, and I learn from him in that way.
Because some people will think, uncomfortable conversations.
But that's okay. That's my playground, uncomfortable conversations.
So in trying to give voice to the dead, what have you learned about humanity of those that are living, in them acknowledging what has transpired in history or not?
It's just how we avoid uncomfortable conversations, yet we all have this need to heal. And yet healing is such an uncomfortable process. So that has been quite a jarring putting together of things, that we need to be uncomfortable to heal. I've been privileged to have a tool such as this film, A Story of Bones, and that is what we use it as, to initiate an uncomfortable conversation where I've bared my soul on this 90-minute reel in how I've experienced and have built a relationship with this site and this history and made it personal. What it does for people who are watching in a cinema or in a community screening hall is that it allows them to personally connect with a similar experience. It might be vastly different from what I've been through, but injustices of that kind is easily relatable when you bare your soul. And the gratitude that comes from being able to have that mirrored has been worth all of it. That people feel they can open up a space within them that they haven't been able to, because in society today, we just don't create spaces to have these conversations. We shut it down and we kill stories that even mention anything to do with trauma, and especially when it comes to racism.
Yeah, and colonialism.
And colonialism.
It's like, move on already.
Yes, and it's just a hashtag, or decolonizing is just a word of the day, when it's actually such a deeply personal experience.
Because the colonizers are also as traumatized.
They are. I keep thinking we knew what was chasing our ancestors.
Yeah.
It was the colonizers, but what was chasing them?
What were they running away from?
Because they were running really fast to catch us. What were they so afraid of?
Yeah, those are the things that I suppose people take for granted. That if you are superior, that you're truly superior, that it's not coming from an inferiority complex, which is part of
the psychology of the beast.
Psychology, yeah. So someone might say that there are so many challenges facing the living. Why do you dedicate so much energy and time to those that are no longer living amongst us? What's your response?
I will have to lean on a quote that a friend of mine, a fellow activist, Peggy King Yorda, who also 30 years prior worked on the New York African burial ground.
I think you had a webinar with her.
Yeah. So she basically guided me through this process, and was that person I called on when I was struggling. And what she has as a piece of wisdom in answering that question, because many people have asked us that question, and we've tried to answer it in many different ways, but she's come up with this beautiful explanation where archaeologists and anthropologists defines what makes us human as how we bury our dead. We pray over them, we sing over them, we bury them with our prized possessions, our beads and our jewels and our cloths that we cherished and herbs, and we pour libations over them. That is what makes us human, how we engage with that practice. Now imagine a group of people, a community, a nation that was engaging in this practice of burying their dead, this human activity, under the umbrella of an institution that claimed that they were less than human, that they were subhuman. That act that they were engaging in was a revolutionary act of reclaiming their humanity and their human dignity. So when we fight for our sacred sites, these histories, these artifacts, these human remains, we are remembering them and how they stood up during that time, against the system that was claiming that they were less than human. So you might think that I'm fighting for the dead. I'm not. I'm fighting for the living right now, because I'm fighting for the human dignity that we need to restore through healing.
And humanity, because that's the essence of us.
And that is what was stripped through the process of colonialism and slavery, and that is what needs to be restored.
What is the one beautiful trait of human beings do you hang on to in difficult moments of seeing the lack of dignity in the treatment of African people?
I would say resilience, our resilience, even through trauma. We have leaned towards triumph. We have stood up again. We keep believing in humanity, no matter what. And having a sense of humor. I mean, it makes survival so much easier to just lean onto the lighter side of us.
I think also, I'm just thinking, it seems like the essence of what is deep in the African is that we ultimately know that we all love, that the essence of humanity. So that even if you see that evilness coming to you, there is an essence of you that knows that this is acting out of turning away from love, but we are all love. So we can chat forever, as you can imagine. So what do you still have on your bucket list that you still want to accomplish in your career?
Leaving St. Helena was really hard for me because it was such a personal experience. My connection and my relationship with that site and those people, I'm tethered to them. So selfishly, I want to complete the journey that they made. I've only seen one part of them. They've only revealed one part of their journey to me. So I'd like to revisit, or I'd like to visit. I say revisit as if I've been there, but I've been there through them. I'd like to go to Angola, to Congo and Gabon, and witness the space that they were
taken from,
ensnared from, and taken from. And I'd love to go to the Caribbean, where the descendants and those people that had to leave that sacred space and continue that journey to the Caribbean. I want to follow that route with them. I'm writing a book because I know that the death of narratives of people of color and the death of, actively working towards not letting the story of the hunted to be continued to be told through the eyes of the hunter is active work. And introducing more of our narratives in every form and medium that is possible is right on top of the list for me. So it's a long list. It's a long bucket list of things, but those two are definitely on the top.
Yeah. I mean, that also is the reason why I do what I do, because we need as many platforms as possible to capture this wisdom and from African people,
Yes, Africa Rising.
Yeah. And African people are evolving in terms of who defines themselves as African.
And how we define it.
Yes. So future generations will have that perception of wise conversations that we have. In closing, if this was the last conversation, what wisdom would you leave us with?
I would have to reflect on my own personal journey of self-doubt and fear, and say to those that are embarking on their journey and recognizing their lane, you are in your own lane. Create your own lane. Create your own world that you operate in that suits your characters, your traits. We need more people to come alive and be true and authentic in who they really are. That is what's going to change this world. We don't need more Anninas or Dudus. We need more people to engage in these spaces and narratives in their own quirky and weird and wonderful ways. It's all needed.
And bring their gifts to the fore.
Absolutely.
Which moves humanity forward. Thank you very much, my friend, for coming.
Thank you so much for this space.
Henry S. Truman said, "There is nothing new in the world except the history you do not know." Hope this conversation has revealed to you a history that is worth learning about. Knowing history provides us with the context for understanding the present. Most importantly, understanding the history of the marginalized in our world helps us to develop our critical thinking, to cultivate our compassion, and an opportunity for you to do better and to be a better human being. Until the wise conversation of next time, wishing you a love-filled, compassionate, and productive life.
Thank you for making time for this episode of Wisdom Personified Conversations with Dudu Msomi. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Click on the bell notification to be informed when our next episode is available. Wisdom Personified Conversations with Dudu Msomi is also now available on Facebook Watch, Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. Enjoy the wisdom journey.